It is said there's a banshee in Rathdrum. She walks down a small path that leads into a field across the road from a famine graveyard. I saw her when I went to visit my friend's house there. I was walking up to the town through the fields at night. I get halfway up the pathway and I heard a loud wail. I looked around and suddenly this black figure was just in front of me. Black hair, black eyes, white dress. She stared at me, turned around, and then walked up the path. When I returned down the path later that night, I saw an ambulance outside their neighbor's house. An old granny who lived nearby. My friend had a heart attack. My friend saw the same thing a few weeks afterward, and then they had Black August where 6 people died that month. I'm not good at setting the atmosphere, but that event freaked me out. I haven't been back to Rathdrum in years. When I was a little kid, I picked up a comb while walking on the Strand, and I wouldn't listen to my mother telling me to throw it away. I held on to it for dear life because it was free stuff. My mother tried telling me it belonged to the banshee, and she'll come looking for it tonight, but I was having none of it. I thought she just wanted my new comb for herself or something. Then later that night, I was out in the back garden, playing with my new comb, and suddenly I heard a wailing sound in the distance. I was terrified, dropped the comb and ran into the house, only to find my mother coming in the front door, laughing her ass off, going, She got me good. The village had always celebrated St. Patrick's Day with wild parades, music, and endless pints of beer. But there was one rule: never stay out past midnight. Every year, the elders would warn the younger folk, their voices heavy with unease. Come home before the last bell, they'd say, or he'll find you. Everyone knew the story of the Green Man. He was older than Christianity, older than the hills themselves, a twisted figure from pagan legend. Once, he had ruled the forests and fields, worshipped in rituals long forgotten. But when St. Patrick brought Christianity to Ireland, the Green Man was cast out, his power shattered, yet he remained in the shadows, biding his time, waiting for the day he'd reclaim what was his. Ciara didn't believe the stories. They were just old wives' tales meant to scare kids, right? So when her friends dared her to stay out past midnight on St. Patrick's Day, she laughed and agreed. "What's the worst that could happen?" she said, draining her pint. The streets were empty when the church bell struck 12. The festive lights flickered as if the electricity was struggling. Ciara stood alone in the village square, the laughter of her friends now a distant memory. The wind carried a faint whisper, like voices just out of reach. "All right," she muttered, shivering. "You've made your point, guys. Very funny." But no one answered. The whispers grew louder, words she couldn't understand, swirling around her like a chant. Then she saw him. At the edge of the square, standing unnaturally still, was a man. His skin was mossy green, his hair like twisted vines, and his eyes glowed an eerie, pale yellow. His smile was too wide, his teeth jagged and sharp. "Who's there?" Ciara called, her voice trembling. The Green Man tilted his head, as if studying her. Then he stepped forward, his feet leaving dark, wet imprints on the cobblestones. His movements were wrong, jerky, unnatural, like a puppet on invisible strings. Ciara shouted at the figure, backing away. She turned to run, but the cobblestones beneath her feet seemed to shift and buckle. Vines erupted from the cracks, wrapping around her ankles, pulling her to the ground. She screamed, clawing at the earth, but the vines tightened, their thorns biting into her skin. "You stayed too long?" the Green Man hissed, his voice like leaves rustling in a storm. He crouched over her, his face inches from hers. His breath smelled of rotting wood and damp earth. "This is my time now." Ciara tried to pray, tried to scream again, but the vines crept up her body, covering her mouth, silencing her. Her last sight was his glowing eyes, unblinking, as the world went dark. The next morning, the villagers found the square empty, save for a patch of green moss where Ciara had last been seen. No one spoke of what happened. They simply hung a fresh wreath on the church door and warned the children, as they always did, "Come home before the last bell, or he'll find you." So, for context, my grandfather grew up in the West, and during that time, Ireland was very old-fashioned, even more so in rural areas, of course. A lot of times, if people had a mental illness that would be easily treatable nowadays, they were just sent to a mental hospital for the rest of their lives. This happened to my great-grandmother on my mom's side. She had postpartum depression after she had her second son, and she was sent away to a mental hospital where she was heavily medicated and stayed there until the day she died. My grandfather and his brother moved out of this cottage the family had been staying in and moved in with their aunt, as their dad was working and didn't have time to take care of them. People in the village called them the orphans, because the mother was sent away and the dad was always working and not living with them. Anyways, fast forward 70 years, when my parents moved into that same cottage. When I was around 2 or 3, I was an only child and I'd be playing with my toys and talking to myself, as you do. Oftentimes, my mom or dad would come into the room and find toys scattered everywhere, and they'd ask what happened, and I kept telling them that it was the lady in the black dress that did it. One day, I asked my dad to get a toy down from a high-up place that I couldn't reach, and he asked me how it got there. I told him that the lady in the black dress put it there. Basically, since I was always playing with this lady in the black dress, my granny believed it was the spirit of my great-grandmother trying to play with me because she didn't get to spend time with her own children.